Okay, council will call the regular city council meeting of February 16th, 2022 to order at 7 p.m. If you join me in pledging the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland.
Here.
Tom Baylor.
Here.
Kathy Sherman is absent. Jeff Guard.
Here.
Melina Meyer.
Here.
Ann Schaefer.
Here.
David Allison.
Here.
David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any modifications? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, agenda's approved as submitted. Does council have any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose? Okay, seeing none. Guest speakers, do we have an incident management team report this evening?
No.
Okay, hearing none, now's the time for audience comments on agenda items. And council, the audience today consists solely of Mr. Chanella, your harbor master, for those online. Chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions. Do we have a CCMC Authority Board representative? A school board? Okay, hearing none. Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Committee highlights of the January board meeting are in the packet. Any comments, council? Okay, I'll touch on RCAC a little bit in my mayor's report. Student council representative, we don't have one this evening, so we have 4 items on the consent calendar. Would council like to set any of those aside and address them separately? Okay, roll call approval of the consent calendar.
On the consent calendar, Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
David Gleason.
Yes.
Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
David Allison.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, minutes were approved in the consent calendar. We don't have bids to consider. So mayor's report, I don't have much of one tonight. Mostly I wanted to report to you, council, thank you for all 7 of you getting me the city managers and city clerks evaluations submitted, good thoughtful evaluations. I compiled all of them, I have them all done, but I had a little computer dilemma and was not able to print them. So what I'd suggest, council, is that we have our executive session at the next meeting and just hand out hard copies so you can see what the whole summary was and summary of comments. And I felt like it was a really productive process last year to boil that down to really a few high-level comments and direction to the clerk and manager, and then have a conversation about, their contracts and compensation and so forth. Or if that sounds good, we'll just schedule that executive session for the next regular meeting. I'm seeing nods here in the room. Does that sound good online? Okay, great. Another item I'd mention is that we got a letter from Regional Citizens Advisory Committee, and the term of our council designee or council representative, Robert Beadle, is up. I did reach out to him. He is willing, would like to serve another term. So we have a couple options on that, council. I guess we could put it on pending agenda. You can either, just direct me to go ahead and solicit him as a representative. We could go out and advertise and solicit to see if there's other people interested, and those would kind of be the options. And maybe when we get to pending agenda, we've got some time. They want the designee by March 30th, so we have 2 more regular meetings. So we've got time to do it any way you'd like there. That's essentially all I had, unless there's any questions. Maybe I'll let Helen speak to this, but we did have a mayor reach out. Actually, it was a governor's office representative on Capitol and whatnot, but Helen's really been working those fronts, so I'll defer to her on that. Manager's report.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to report back that the union is meeting this week to ratify the contract that was negotiated. So I'm not able to bring that to you tonight, but we will have that for your review and approval at the next meeting, the first meeting in March 2nd. Speaking to what the mayor was just discussing, we have put together some capital projects based on anticipated funding that will be coming into the state and entered them into the state CAPSIS system, which is their place where they identify capital projects for each community. I acknowledge that council has not yet seen that list. It's a timing issue at this moment, but at the March 2nd meeting, we will have a full capital project list that is building on what council has approved in the past and has on its CIP list, and add some more projects based on available funding. So I'll have that for you all to approve, and we can make modifications at the state level if necessary. Along that same line, the governor has appointed Bert, just lost his name. Anyway, has appointed someone who's a longtime Alaskan, who's Cottle. Thank you. There we go. I think I would lose my husband's name right now, my brain. Bert Cottle has been appointed by the governor to reach out to all Alaskan communities, leadership, to identify needs and projects that we have and that we anticipate pulling through the state. Bert has gave me a call and asked about our projects, and of course, high on our list was the harbor project and some of the problems that we're having with getting enough funding given the significant change in the cost of the project due to the COVID inflation problems. So he is on our team. They seem very excited about helping us out, but the fact that the governor has identified someone to help all of us navigate and serve as our liaison with the state is a good sign. On another level, ARPA, if you recall, there was a second or third ARPA distribution that was planned. We were allowed to apply for, and we applied mid-December, and just this week got notice that we have been awarded $666,505.32 through that program. Very specific. They took $50 million that was allocated by ARPA to the state and divided it amongst 40 communities based on lost revenue, and that was our allocation. It must be spent on projects that are eligible via the state, federal ARPA requirements. It cannot be used to replace, to be invested. You can't use it for anything other than operation of government. So we had discussed earlier on, and again, I did not anticipate the number would be so large, but we had talked about using it as part of our capital budget. We did not approve a capital budget. We didn't have funding for a capital budget. So I will be bringing to you the capital list of equipment and smaller projects, as well as design and engineering for larger projects. And we'll bring that to you at the next meeting so you guys can walk through and understand what the needs are at the department level and match up those projects to the funding that's available. You certainly can use it for other things, but I'll give you a list of the eligible uses and recommended uses, and we'll have a good session on that conversation as well. We have, as I said, submitted to the state for larger capital projects, everything from sewer, water to harbor to streets and other things like that, and we'll just see where that comes out. I do want to have a conversation around the financials for 2021, which are in your packet on the provisional year-end statements. But before that, I want to turn this over to Tony, who is standing in for Sam tonight, and Mark to give you an update on the harbor rebuild project.
I'll work.
12.
Okay, thank you. Helen did forget to mention one big financial thing we got from the Pacific Cod Disaster Relief Fund for $1,700. So, huge amount, I know, we'll figure out how to spend it. So Sam's not here, but Mark is online, I believe, right, Mark?
Yes, I am, Tony.
Okay, so Mark Keller's online, he's got to give an update of the meetings and where we've been and where we're going, so, and who we've talked to, so. The floor is yours, Mark.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I think probably the most significant thing that we got through in the last couple of weeks, into last week actually, we had our kickoff meeting with MARAD, which is the source of the raised funding that we're going to use for the South Harbor rebuild. And I will say that, you know, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I know I was a little, it was a little less hopeful with the conversation with MARAD than I had hoped it might be. We were potentially kind of looking for some additional funding over the 20 million we had allocated to us, and basically MARAD indicated that they had really allocated all the funds that were available to all the projects that they had identified, and so we weren't going to be able to count on them for additional resources. And the other thing that we tried to bring to the table in our conversation with them was perhaps eliminating one of the components of the South Harbor project, which was to say the bulkhead, because that's close to $7 million, and that would help avoid a lot of gap. It was real clear to me, and I think the others on the call, that MARAD intends to have us build all the three major components, that is the floats, replace all the floats, build the drive-down ramp, and build a bulkhead. And so we're kind of reevaluating kind of how we look at that project. One of the things that MARAD's engineer brought to the table, it's not something we didn't know, but the big driver on increases in cost lately have been the prices of steel. And we had a lot of steel in the bulkhead sheet pile wall. And so we're looking at ways to reduce the tonnage of steel there. Maybe some other than a sheetrock type wall, maybe something like a combi block wall we put down pile for the torsional stiffness, and then use much less sheet pile to contain the fill behind the wall. That's something we're looking at. You know, we had suggested we could defer the bulkhead to a future phase of the project, and that didn't seem to resonate very well with the MARAD folk on the phone. So I spent a fair amount of time when I wasn't watching the football game looking at things that we could do to reduce the size of the project, that is the size of the square footage of some of the features of the project. And I sent Tony and Sam and Curtis a list of, I don't know, 10, 11 things that I thought we might be able to do. We're discussing those now. But basically, you know, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about $137 a square foot for the floats themselves. And if we could reduce the size of the service float, where the drive down ramp comes in, that would help us, depending on our ability to reposition that float and make the drive down ramp shorter. That's $420 a square foot. So we're looking at those options right now, and I don't think we have a definitive answer for you yet, or a recommendation even to consider. But if we reduce the service dock from a 90 by 120 to say an 80 by 100, you know, that saves a pretty significant amount of money, in the neighborhood of about 1.2 million. And then if we are able to go in and narrow up the main walks out to the various floats, by say a foot on the G, H, and I floats. There's some savings to be had there. And of course, Tony, raises the point we need to make sure people can walk through there. We need to be able to make sure we've got a situation where we can remove snow when we have to, and look at those kind of things. So that's what we're really looking at. One of the things that I would like to delve into a little bit more, and haven't yet, is the electric system. As soon as we get RM Consult on board to support us on some engineering evaluations, they have a fellow named Ben Haight, who's a pretty senior electrical engineer, who I've worked with before on other projects in Alaska, and I'd like to get together with Ben and take a look at the electric system that we've got planned out there now and see if there aren't some ways we might be able to skinny that up a little bit and again save some money. I think it's, that whole electric system's a little over $3 million. And if we could take some out of that, that would help us significantly as we move forward. I will touch on a couple of other things. We are pursuing all the various environmental submittals that we need. Getting the environmental work done and approved is a key to getting the grant agreement signed with MARAD. Part of that involves getting what's called an IHA, an incidental harassment agreement, in place so that we can define the takes, if you will, on various of the mammals that frequent the South Harbor area. And what that causes you to do is have marine mammals observers out there, and if you're driving pile, making noise, and the animals come within a certain radius of where you're working, then you have to shut down for a while till the animal leaves. That's an IHA. We need to get that done. We need to finish up an endangered species assessment out there so we can identify what those mammals are, how many are out there, and that will help us define the number of takes. And I don't mean takes as in, demise of the animals, but the number of incidents we can have while we're actually doing construction. We get those two things done, then we should be able to roll out our NEPA documents and get that approved. And once that's in place, then we should be able to free up the funds through the raise. And there was even some indication that raise may be able to help us move through the IHA, and they may, depending on kind of the results of our analyses of the animals and the environmental issues, be able to help us find some of their money before we finish the incidental harassment agreement. So we're kind of pushing on that rope as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're tentatively scheduled right now for what's called a virtual technical review with MARAD on March the 15th. We'll pull together our planning documents. We'll do some sort of a video with them back in Washington, D.C., showing them what the docs look like and talking to them about our plans and how we want to go about doing this. And we should be able to advance some of the ideas we have for shrinking the project a little bit, square footage of the project, in order to help us match the funds that are available for it. And that's really kind of what I wanted to mention to you tonight. And so if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
I would just want to add one thing, just so that everyone on council is aware of the scope of the problem. We submitted to raise a $30 million project, and the project costs now are at $42 million, a 40% increase. So RAISE is asking us to do the project at $30 million because that's the resources we have, and that is not possible. So we're exploring all options. It's all hands on deck looking for resources, and as Mark suggested, looking for cost-cutting opportunities to make this project move forward.
Is there any questions,
We will
council?
find a path forward.
Yes, we will.
Any questions, council? And Mark, is MARAD under Department of Transportation?
Yes, they are. They're a Department of Transportation entity.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, appreciate your time this evening, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, moving on, I just want to go over our provisional year-end statements from 2021. If you'll move on to page 22, 23, 24, 25 in your packet. Again, these, I want to just be really clear that these are provisional documents. They're based on our accounting systems reporting. But as you can see, it shows columns for the 2021 budget and the actuals, and shows the third column over the favorable or unfavorable position for each of those, and then gives you an opportunity to compare those to actuals of 2020. One thing that I want you to note is that you'll notice that we spent exactly what we brought in. It's not a miracle, I promise you. It's a clear opportunity for a plug. If you recall, the ARPA funds were allowed to be used for lost revenue. So we looked at year end and pulled into this document ARPA funds to make up about a $300,000 deficit. So, and that is a legitimate and authorized use for those funds. So we did balance the year-end expenditures to revenue. Probably of note, you'll notice on the revenue side, the biggest negative there are the other governmental and the state bond debt reimbursements for schools. Those were big numbers that we were not able to bring in and anticipated that, but we did well on our tax side, favorable on the $550,000 approximately. We did well. That basically is where we made up the money. We were able to bring in taxes of all kinds there. On the expense side, we really tried hard to hold our expenses down, and you'll see that for the most part, with a few exceptions, we did overspend on the financial side. We did overspend on disaster management, library museum, and we also overspent on the pool and non-departmental. We spent more there, but because of the offset that we were able to use as a plug, we were able to zero out the year end. Again, provisional, there may be changes that result with the audit, but you'll see that when the audit documents are prepared. Any questions at all on that? Okay. Also, just want to show you on the page 23, this is our actual summary of funds. So it shows the different funds that we have established in Cassell, our accounting software. So you can see that we have distinguished every one of the funds, and we do have them segregated so that you can see what's in the Harbor Reserve Fund. You can see what's in the Refuge Enterprise Fund. You can see all those totals. You can see where the year 2020 began or ended and 2021 ended, and you can see on the fourth column over 21 to 20 comparisons. Again, favorable is a positive and unfavorable is a negative. Same with expenditures down below. You'll see how the various funds actually were recorded and where those expenditures were, whether transfers were made out, whether we got, we expended quite a bit on COVID in 2020 and not so much in 2021. But you can see where all those numbers are coming in. And I give you an opportunity now to ask any questions about that. But again, this is pulled from our accounting software and should be in good shape. And then the final document on page 25 is the cash report. It shows exactly where we are. This is a flash moment of time. So at this report, we were at a negative $115K in our FNBA checking account. That is just a matter of not having revenue coming in at that moment in time, or moving from the sweep account into those various accounts to cover payroll and other expenses. You'll see the Harbor Fund is whole at 2.1 million. We have an ambulance fund set aside for vehicle purchase. And then there's the UBS account funds there. And AMLA, various other funds that are also there. So again, the total balances out the allocations and the accounts at $17.3 million. Again, any questions, let me know.
Helen,
Yeah,
so on that harbor account, FNBA, is that the raw fish tax in there also?
it would be any reserve account fund balances, yes. So raw fish tax is in there.
Okay.
So I think the good news is that we are not running in the negative. We haven't overspent. COVID resources certainly have helped us. But I think we're in a position where we can move forward with a certain degree of confidence that we're not breaking the bank.
Yes, Councilman Allison.
I guess I don't really have a question, just have a comment and probably something for pending agenda later on, but, you know, I've been asking for balances and where that money is at for some time, and it's apparent from this report that almost all of that money is of those special funds, the enterprise funds and the depreciation funds are, with the exception of the CDs at FNBA, are pretty much in that sweep account, which I don't believe makes any interest, or maybe it makes 0.0005% or so. I don't know if it makes any interest at all. It doesn't make much, if that. And I think that council needs to consider not necessarily putting that money in the permanent fund, but putting it in a fund that's invested similar to the way the permanent fund is, at least those depreciation funds. And I know Tony has eyes on spending a bunch of his in the near future, but regardless, I think that we're basically using our enterprise funds, which we expect to run as a business, and we're using all their money for our daily cash flow needs. And I really think council needs to find out from somebody that knows what an appropriate amount in that sweep account is. Do we need $4.5 million in our sweep account? I don't know. I would think probably not. You know, we're only 115,000 over there. You know, if we had 200,000 in it on this particular day, it would have covered it just fine. But I'm sure there are other days where we might be $1 million. But I doubt that there's ever a sweep of $4.8 million in that account or anywhere near that. So I think we need to. We're missing the boat on the interest on that. On that money that's in that sweep account, and certainly, you know, part of the audit, I don't remember exactly what page, but one of those pages in there said that the interest from those funds was allocated back to those funds, and I didn't see anywhere in that audit where that had happened, but probably because they aren't making any interest is why we don't see it. But anyway, I think, and I'll bring it up at pending agenda, but we need to look at the finances of where we have the money and how much it is. And if we need $5 million in the sweep account, then we still need to have that other money in an interest-bearing account for those enterprise funds. And if we need to come up with other money for the sweep account, so be it. We need to figure that out. But
If I could respond to that, because I think I have a solution, and we'll have it for you at the next meeting. I mentioned at the last meeting or the meeting before that I've engaged a company called CashVest, and it's right now analyzing every one of our accounts over the last 2 years. looking at monthly statements and assessing the needs of the city, what our cash flow needs are, assessing all the investments, and looking for opportunities for us to gain more revenue. So I'll have that report for you. I'm meeting with them tomorrow. And they have done their first run-through of all of our statements. They have had electronic access to all of our accounts, FNBA, as well as our UBS accounts. And we'll be able to provide the information that you're requesting at the next meeting or the meeting after.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And, you know, it's another statement in the audit they made was that, you know, our couple of our enterprise funds aren't pulling their own weight. I think that's with the depreciation in
Yep.
there, which we don't really count, but we probably should. But they made that comment in there, but then we're taking away all their interest. We're taking away the opportunity for interest. I don't think we're getting interest that we're not sharing with them. We're just flat out not getting any interest on that money. And, you know, we made $700,000 on 5 million in 2020, 750 million, whatever it was. And, you know, half of that, 5 million, that's, you know, that's $350,000 that we gave up by having all that money in a sweep account instead of in an investment account. So anyway, things to think about. That's all I have.
Other questions, comments, council, on the financials or other parts of the manager's report? Okay, hearing none, clerk's report.
If anybody's listening, I just wanted to say that the last day to get an absentee ballot that I mail to you is February 22nd. I've sent about 40 or 45 out, and I've had about 40 people come in person, so that's a good number. And we still have the rest of this week, all of next week, except if anybody's listening, we're not open on Monday. It's a holiday, so we won't be open on the 21st for early voting. Is that next week? Yeah. And that's it. I'm just doing a lot of early voting stuff in the office.
Okay, any questions, council?
I realized I forgot to speak to one thing that was in the memo that I shared with you, page 21 of your packet. I did also, we spoke briefly about the investment earnings. Code says that we will, with the audited financial statement, present the investment earnings from the preceding year. So I did go ahead and do an assessment, again, unaudited, it's preliminary, but city got basically $518,000 of net income from our 2021 investments. It's available as unrestricted income from Code after expenses. We budgeted $100,000 in the FY22 budget from that fund source, and there's a balance of $418,000 basically, that is available for either reinvestment in the fund or spending pending council direction. So at the next meeting, that information will be presented to you with some possible options of what you want to consider there. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I did have a comment, maybe a question on that. In the past, prior to this year, that's always just, that interest has just been rolled back into the permanent fund. Does that happen automatically on a certain date or time, or?
It stays there unless it's withdrawn from the fund.
Okay. But the way you're proposing it this year, it doesn't require six positive votes to take it out.
Well, this is actually Code, so I think maybe this has been overlooked. It says, and these are all quoted from Code, is that the General Reserve Fund Income and Distribution, and it's Chapter 5.44050 states, in conjunction with the audit of the financial statements each year, the net income of the fund shall be determined as of the first day of the preceding fiscal year and be reported by city treasurer. The net income is unrestricted general income of the city. Net income means the total income yielded from the investment of the principal for the preceding year, less any amounts needed to reimburse the fund principal, to offset reduction in fund principal, or to offset any duplicative effect of inflation. And it can be used as unrestricted general income of the city. So council's allowed to make a decision about how it's used, and I think we can do whatever you want, but I just wanted you to be aware that the code does state this. It doesn't require a supermajority of vote. It just says that this is how it is used.
Right, and that's my point, I guess. I understand what you're saying, that it's available and that the code says that, and I understand what the code says. I'm just saying, in past years, it has been left in the permanent fund. Council has not made a decision to move that money from unrestricted general funds to the permanent fund. We've never made that decision sitting there on council, when I've been sitting on council anyway. So, is there a time that happens, or are we saying that we haven't been following code and now we need to make a decision on where that money goes?
Yeah, it says that this information will be shared with council when the audit is presented.
Okay, maybe that's another thing
So,
for the pending agenda then, because I don't personally believe that we ought to be able to spend it just like any other money. It should be, it's part of the permanent fund. It should be subject to permanent fund rules, in my opinion. I think that maybe there's a time like during the budget where we can decide that, we're gonna spend 100,000 of that, but anything left after we do the budget should be put back in there. And if we have to do that as an option, then we'll put it on the next, that'll be one of the options, I would hope.
Yeah, and I think.
And we get that from the manager, but I think it just, I guess it bothers me when I see the report that says, so now there's $418,000 available. There's 10 million available if we're going to consider it that way.
I think this is really intended to ask council to not be passive about it, but to actually take action.
Sure.
So it's presented that it's available pending council direction, however it should be done. I'm just presenting this as information as required by code.
I think Councilman Ellison might be remembering too, in past cycles, council's done that, allocated also a lot of expenditures out of the permanent fund. They were kind of provisional to try to pay it back at some point. So anyway, other comments on any of the management reports or mayors, clerks, managers? Susan?
Yeah, I was just looking up that piece of code, and the part about the supermajority needed for movement of permanent fund money speaks to the principal. It specifically says the principal of the fund. So possibly the interest could be used.
I understand that, but I don't want to end up like the state of Alaska where we're all fighting over spending the city's money and suddenly it's available for whatever we want to spend it on for this whim or that whim. It's there for permanent needs, for replacing of infrastructure, for those kind of things. It's not money that we can just throw away every year, or we're not going to have any pretty soon. So I just want to, if we need to change code to firm that up, or if we need to have a resolution or whatever we need to do to place that interest back into the principal of the fund, then I'm all for that. But I don't want to just say we got another $400,000 that we can find $400,000 worth of projects to throw it at.
Okay, so that would probably be kind of like a after the audit, like a June, July timeframe or something, when you had a solid number to allocate. Just thinking out loud in terms of pending agenda, but, okay. Anything else on those
But
reports?
the audit will be completed and presented until like October.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Which is before the budget period, so if all goes well, it'll be
Timely,
timely,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time, actually, so kind of see where you land on the year, so. Okay, there's correspondence in the packet. Council, any comments, or Councilman Gleason?
Yeah, just comment on the letter you wrote to ABC. I think that was to the point. Good letter.
Okay, well, thank you, and actually, there was some misinformation, I think, circulating in the community about the timeliness of the city filing their comments and so forth, and that was all in order. They did receive those and had those to consider, so I just think it's important to protect our home rule status in city decision-making, and it felt kind of arbitrary after all the debate and discussion and testimony the city had on it, and then to kind of have it batted around was pretty frustrating. I think it is good to be cognizant, though, that I think in general, city would have liked to have had an option to have two, and that's somewhere where, city can certainly weigh in on that front as well. In other words, to have more self-determined ability to have two breweries if Cordova feels like it's in the community interest. Councilman Allison?
Yeah, there's a bill regarding breweries and liquor going through the legislature right now. And I haven't read the bill myself or know what's in it. But from the news, anyway, in the last couple of nights, it sounded like that there was a good opportunity for that to pass. So that may change some of the rules with breweries and that kind of thing too. So
Exactly. Anything else on the correspondence, Council? Councilman Allison?
yeah, Mr. Mayor, do we need to make any comments on the, or is it time to make comments on the proposal from the Department of the Navy? Or I don't even know if we want to. I just, you look at those two maps and it's quite an increase in space.
It's a good question. I just got a copy of that letter in my inbox yesterday, or when I checked it, and honestly, I hadn't read it yet. But
anyway, if there's a time, if we still have time to comment and we want to comment, then maybe that can go on a future agenda as well. I think it was just a notice that they're intent
think it was.
to file that. I don't think they've actually.
I agree. I think it says it's not even going to be out until March 2022, the draft for comment.
Yeah, well, that's
So-
next month. So.
and so they're encouraging us to disseminate that to the community and so forth, that'll be coming out and to watch for it, so. Good point. Other comments on communications? Okay, we don't have ordinances and resolutions or unfinished business. New and miscellaneous business, pending agenda, capital improvements, projects list, calendar, elected and appointed officials list.
Well, I'm ready to kill Helen because she said about 7 different things that she's putting on next meeting. Are those really happening? Union contract, CIP list. You need an executive session. And
Permanent
then,
fund earnings. She said she was going to have something next meeting for that. Yeah.
I probably, since it's kind of booked up, let's push that to the following week. We'll be able, following meeting and second meeting in March. And that will give CashNet time to pull all that together. And we'll have a better conversation or time for conversation.
but then the ARPA, 666,000,
That's part of capital, yeah.
Do we
that'll be part.
attend that?
Yeah, when is the certification of the election?
We're doing it at the March 16th meeting.
At the end or the beginning?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we should, yes, do it at the very last thing. We always used to do it at special meetings. When we changed code, now it coincides with the second March meeting.
Yeah.
So it's easier to just do it then, but let's do it the right way and not swear those people in, and they don't
them into it.
do anything at that meeting.
Okay.
The next meeting is theirs.
And it's what, 10 days after the regular election for absentees to?
No, 15 days.
Oh, okay.
To get back. That's why we count the last ones the morning of the 16th, but I'll have the resolution in the packet awaiting fill-in numbers. But most of it gets counted on election day now. All this
Okay.
early stuff gets counted. It's only the mailed stuff that doesn't.
Exactly. Okay, so I think the clerk's got those items captured.
The RCAC thing. What-
RCAC, yeah. So I think, well, what's the will of council there?
I say let Robert have it.
Ann,
I'd be inclined to open it up if people want to nominate or express interest. I think he's done a really great job. He's good at keeping us informed, and I'd be happy if he is the one that ends up continuing to do so. But I don't think it hurts to see if there's other interest.
I don't have it right in front of me. I think he's been the representative for 3 years, maybe more.
I think, yeah, we
Maybe
Might be
six.
stated.
So, yeah, and like you said, it doesn't mean that council can't reappoint him. It just provides an opportunity if someone else would like to. So
Actually, he's been doing it since 13.
13. Wow.
8 years.
Well, he's
So 8, 9 years. So, council, is there any objection to just soliciting at least for a couple of weeks? And so it can get into that March 16th agenda to satisfy him? Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think it
Okay.
just like with RFPs, going out for attorney RFPs or accountant RFPs, it's the same thing. We can appoint the same person or not, but we don't know what the interest is out there.
Okay.
Can I make another comment? Oh,
Please.
sorry.
Yeah.
Not specifically about that, but we happen to have seats on Planning and Historic Preservation Commission open.
Can we do them all?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. I'll put those out again, but I just got a letter of interest or an application for planning, so
Okay.
I was going to send that to you.
Okay, great.
And hopefully, maybe that'll be in next packet too.
Okay.
To fill them.
Okay, great. Anything else pending? Okay, Mr. Chanella, would you like to participate as the audience member? I'm good, thank you. Okay. No audience participation.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do council comments, and we'll start online. Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, thanks. I would agree with some of Mr. Allison's comments about the earnings from permanent fund, and perhaps express some of my frustration as far as well as the under the manager's evaluation of getting information out to council in regards to that $600,000. That would have been nice information to have emailed to us in advance so we could have read about it, understood it, perhaps ask questions, and then be able to speak to it to the public. Now I'll have to go back and try to research it. The same with the UBS funds or the finance committee or the people looking at our funds. It would have been nice to get an update of what they are doing. So little things like that help you be a better council person. Thanks everybody for being there tonight. That's all.
Okay, Councilman Guard.
Yeah, kind of on the same line. We had talked about looking at seeing how we were going to use our permanent fund, whether we were going to make an endowment out of it, what we wanted to do with it, how we wanted to manage it for it. So, although I do agree with the sentiment that I don't want to just go spend every nickel we make out of the permanent fund just because we got it, but it makes sense that we should make the decisions on how we want to structure the use of our permanent fund before we decide what we're doing with the money out of it. that's got that. Talking about the alcohol bill going through the state legislature right now, one of the things in there is a clause to make an avenue for communities to petition if they want more of something than they're allotted for, like more liquor stores or more brew pubs or more whatever. So that avenue may be open to the community if we're interested in having more than one brew pub. So anyway, that's everything I've got. Thanks everybody for getting stuff out for us, and we will leave it at that.
Okay, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, thanks for all the reports and financial reports today. Really appreciate looking over that, and I do look forward to having a longer discussion about the finances and what we do with these income earnings and making sure everything's structured the right way. So I think we are in the right path. The first time that I've heard this brought up, I've been on council too, about the permanent fund earnings and how it's written in code. So I do look forward to having a discussion about this at a later date. Appreciate all the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to make audience comments, Wendy? We're just right at the tail end, so I always like to provide a chance. So council comments here in the room, Councilman Allison?
Yeah, if you're looking for projects for the capital improvement list, I would still really think that between us and the school district, we need to get a bathroom at that Mount Echols playground for after school hours or summertime. The kids use the woods or behind the dumpster a lot more than you would think. If you just sit there for about an hour someday when they're all playing, that's what happens right now, and that's not right. We should, of any place in town that needs a bathroom, it's our most used parks. So anyway, that was on my list for COVID things, and it's still on my list, whether it's COVID or not. It's just a hygiene thing, kids like to play and they gotta go and they can't always go home. So anyway, that's all I had for now. Thanks everybody for their work and for the audit, and I look forward to seeing an audit a little sooner this year before budget time, hopefully.
Hey, Councilman Gleason?
Just thanks, Helen, for the reminder on that it's council's responsibility to decide what to do with that interest income. And I think Dave brought up a really good point with that. If you got it sitting around, it's real easy to try to figure out how to spend it. So I think 2 good points. Thanks, Tony, for your very brief report. I gotta say, Dave, the woods have worked forever. That's it.
And Councilman Schaefer, you're the final word.
Yeah, thank you for the harbor update, and it was nice to get the audit at long last. And I guess I would just encourage everyone to go vote in person this week and next week, and then on March 1st.
All right, we have no executive session, so there's just one remaining motion.
Second.
Have at least one motion to adjourn and a second. Any opposed?